One of the most important things to recognize in market research is that there are essentially three types of market research. Now, one of the most common problems that I see is that people jump immediately to surveys, but surveys are rarely the first place that you want to do market research. The other common mistake that I see is a lot of people will jump to A/B testing, but again, that's rarely where you want to start. In a lot of cases, the most important type of market research is going to be number one. This is called exploratory research. It's kind of research that you do to get insights, to get some perspective on what the market looks like, what the market wants, what's going on in the market, because you're going to have huge blind spots. Even Fortune 50 companies that have been doing marketing for 100 years have huge blind spots with respect to their marketing. So to think that you fully understand what customers want, what the competitive landscape looks like, is a bit absurd. So when we talk about exploratory research, really what we're talking about are types of research such as interviews. So just talking one-on-one to people in a conversation. Perhaps it's in person, perhaps it's on the phone, maybe it's in a Zoom call or a Google Meet, or perhaps at a minimum, it's something like an email or Facebook conversation through Messenger, something like that. Another form of exploratory research that I've used is focus groups, and I'll get into more detail about how those might be useful later. And then another would be observations. So observing consumers, for example, in a grocery store. How are they looking at products that are on the shelf? Or maybe you're using some sort of recording software to see how people's mouse moves when they're on a website or an e-commerce page, something like that. So I would say this is one of the critical pieces that is missing when people think about market research, is they're not actually doing exploratory research with things like just talking to prospective customers or prospective clients. All right, number two is descriptive market research. So this is quantitative. This is where we're actually quantifying. We're not just trying to get insights, qualitative insights. And there are two types that we would have here. So one is longitudinal, where we're measuring the impact of something over time. So this is sometimes actually very rare in research. Often all that we're doing is we're taking a snapshot of what the market looks like at one period of time. But of course that changes, that evolves based on market conditions, based on supply and demand. A one-time snapshot doesn't necessarily give us the whole picture. Now, one of the big mistakes that we often see here is with brand marketing. So brand marketing is something that is designed to reach as many people basically in the market as possible that are category buyers. But the impact of that type of advertising isn't realized at one point in time. It often takes 6+ months to actually realize the bulk of the impact. So if you're not doing a longitudinal study, a lot of those impacts you may be completely oblivious to what's happening. So what's far more common is doing something like cross-sectional research. And the most prototypical example of descriptive research, of quantitative research, is surveys. So surveys are really about trying to quantify the insights that you got in your exploratory research. So for example, perhaps many people talked about how they wanted durable products. Well, how many people prefer durable to something that's just cheaper? And you can do that by asking questions such as, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much is durability important to you? On a scale of 1 to 5, how much is price important to you? And you can assign a number to it. And there are good ways to do that, and there are bad ways to do that. Okay, so descriptive is the second category of market research. And the third is causal. So this is where we're doing experiments to figure out a causal relationship between different variables. Some examples here would be when you have an experiment group and then you also have a control group. So you might take a sample of people that represent your target buyers and you introduce them to something like an advertisement. And then you have a control group, another random sample of potential buyers, and you don't expose them to an advertisement. And then perhaps in a few months, you measure the effects of how much revenue came from the control group versus the experiment group. Another very common example that we see today with experiments would be A/B testing or ABC testing or multivariate testing. The most common is just a simple A/B split test where, for example, You expose people to one version of a homepage versus another, and you randomly assign people to those variants, or it might be just a specific landing page. So maybe there's a landing page for e-commerce, and then you measure the effects over time to see what was the lifetime value of the customers that came in through variant A versus variant B. So the key thing that I want you to remember is that there are three types of market research: exploratory, descriptive, and causal. And you shouldn't jump the gun and assume that surveys are going to be the type of research that makes the most sense for you at this point in time. Often it may just mean actually talking to prospective customers to get their perspective on things.